All right, we're live. We're back. My name is Sunny Ray. It's the Sunny Ray Show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Today, I'm joined by Sampo Parkinen. Did I say your last name correctly?
That is perfect pronunciation.
Okay, good. Sampo, where are you calling in from? Are you in Finland?
No, I'm
Or
originally
elsewhere?
Finnish, but I
Okay.
am based in lovely Chicago.
Right,
Very cloudy
right. You
Chicago
mentioned
today, but yeah.
cloudy Chicago. Yeah, I was just telling you how much I love it. So, just to kick it off, I like to just tell people a little bit about the company you're building today, right? Just maybe a paragraph or something. And is it Reviv? Revive? How do you? What's the best way to pronounce it?
Yeah, that always sparks a conversation. We pronounce it Reviv, but it's
Reviv.
always
Okay,
a conversation starter. It's like how on earth do you pronounce it? But yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me. Pleasure
you're
to be
welcome.
here. So what we're actually building with Reviv is, and we've been at this for 10 years, is we're effectively building the AI intelligence layer for commerce, for personal commerce, really starting from skin health, beauty, and wellness, because these are the most personal product categories that as a consumer you'll ever buy. And so basically what we're offering retailers and brands is an AI powered customer experience platform that allows them to create this personalized customer experience across those verticals. And we've been at this for 10 years now. So we started in 2016. We've got customers in more than 50 countries today, about 50 people in the team. And we're growing quite nicely. We are EBITDA positive, profitable, all that. But yeah, it's an interesting time because we did start kind of way before AI was a thing, and I remember people used to roll their eyes. So like what voodoo is this when we were showcasing AI 10 years ago. But yeah, that's what we're doing.
I bet. I bet. That's super cool. So, okay, I guess I always like to like put the company story a little bit on ice until we just learn a little bit more about the founder. To me, without the human side of the story, things kind of just feel like they fall flat. So, you grew up in Finland, as you mentioned. What was your childhood like, and were you always drawn to tech?
Well, it wasn't always. I'd say a pretty regular kind of happy childhood, but I wasn't actually always drawn to tech. I mean, I wasn't even drawn to entrepreneurship. I mean, to be honest, I went through a local university in Finland, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had no idea, and then it was actually my co-founder. We met in university, and he kind of imprinted the idea that we should start a business. So we ended up starting our first company straight out of university, and ended up selling that in 2013. And I guess at this point I'm unemployable because I've been doing this for 20 years, and I don't think I would know how to do anything else. Um, my wife keeps on begging me. It's like, not another company, not another company. But I'm not sure I would know how to do anything else. But yeah, it wasn't something where I would say I was kind of drawn into from an early age. It just happened, and then I realized, well, this is probably the best thing that I could be doing is building companies. I really enjoy it. I love it. I I don't know if I would know how to do anything else anymore.
And how did a business degree shape the way you think about building products?
Well, I mean, to be honest, like if I'm brutally honest, and I usually am, like Finns are known for that. I mean, a business degree in a university, it's like you get a lot of the theoretical knowledge of all the different kind of substance matters when it comes to building a company and building a business. But in the end of the day, like the most valuable thing that you can get are actually the connections that you get with the people, and the other students, and the networks that you form. Because in the end of the day, like, you're building a real business of any kind, it's not something you can study in a textbook. Like you can't just read about marketing and say, okay, these are the four P's of marketing. Hey, this is how it's going to work. Well, guess what? In the real world, I mean, sure, maybe knowing some theory is useful, but things don't. I mean, they don't often work that way. So I would say for anyone kind of starting a business, if you're doing a kind of business degree, like it's helpful because you understand where all the kind of technical elements of building a business, and you kind of can ground yourself to that. But what you learn in marketing is probably not going to help you find the right channels, and what you've heard learn about building a product is probably not going to help you find product market fit. Um, that's something you got to do on your own. Like so I mean, maybe, I mean, just brain, off the top of my head, sometimes it's even a disadvantage because you kind of go into it with some preconceptions, like this is how it's supposed to work. um, Kind of, I get similar preconceptions when I talk to like people who've worked their whole career in kind of corporate life and they go into startups. I was like, no, 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 this is how it's supposed to work. This is how we did it in the corporation. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way. Um, so, um, so yeah, it can be a disadvantage too.
So you, before Reviv, you co-founded Rapid Blue Solutions. How did that
Yeah.
company come about?
Oh man, so that's a long story. I mean, we started straight out of university, which again was the best time to start anything because you didn't have kids, you didn't have a lot of financial responsibilities. You were just thinking, oh well, let's build something cool. The original idea was kind of this, back then, and this is probably like we started the company I think in 2007, but we started thinking about it maybe like 2005, 2006. Um, and Google Analytics was kind of a new thing, right? It's like you track people online and what they do on websites and so forth. So we had this crazy idea of what if we could do that in the real world? Like most of the what people do happens in the real world. Like e-commerce was like less than 10% and probably like 5% of commerce back then. I was like, well, most of commerce and business happens in the real world. Like, are there signals that we can kind of look at from people's mobile phones and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and these types of things to figure out and give analytics and insights, kind of like a real world Google Analytics. And that's how kind of we came up with that idea. It's like, well, if this stuff is valuable for retailers and brands to understand how customers are moving about in the virtual world, it's got to be valuable in the real world as well. I mean, infinitely more so. So eventually that's what we started building. And of course, I know folks are going to freak out. This thing, privacy, all these things. You're tracking my phone. Back then, like privacy wasn't as big of a deal. Like it really wasn't. The legislation wasn't there, and GDPR wasn't there, and BIPA here in Illinois, where I'm based, it wasn't there. But yeah, that's effectively what we're doing.
And Rapid Blue was acquired by Shopper Track. So what was that
Yep.
experience like as a first-time founder going through an exit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was life changing. Like from a kind of personal perspective, it was definitely life changing. Um, but it was also pretty interesting because again, you're kind of young and naive, and you didn't really know what to expect. And I'd never worked at a corporation either, so that was new. And But yeah, it was. I mean, to be honest, like the whole process of being acquired, I mean, that was immensely stressful. Like it was the most stressful 6 months of my life, even more stressful than running a business, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to, on one hand, kind of build your business, right? And that's your day job. You're trying to build your business. And then your night job is going through due diligence and explaining all these things and providing all sorts of documentation and having an army of lawyers kind of rip through everything about your business trying to poke holes at it. And you have to be able to keep these things separate because you've got customers, you've got employees, you've got other stakeholders, even some of your investors who just, you can't tell them that this is going on, like until a certain point in time. Like you just can't tell them that, hey, we're in the middle of these sort of conversations. But you have to do that, and you have to be able to build a business. And we were a small team, so it's not like I could delegate a lot of the kind of day-to-day stuff to an army of employees. Like I think we're like 15, 20 people when we got acquired. So it was a really kind of, the process of being acquired was a really stressful one. um, but in the end of the day, it worked out pretty well. And you know yeah.
And then you also became a Techstars mentor and angel investor. So I guess what drew you to giving back to early stage founders?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, to be honest, I kind of had a bit of an imposter syndrome, right? When I first had kind of sold my company, and I moved to Chicago on an earnout from Helsinki with my wife and kids. And I had a bit of an imposter syndrome because I was like, well, it was a local entrepreneur here who said, well, why don't you kind of look at doing some angel investing or kind of be a mentor and give back. And here in Chicago, they had a great platform for that. They had this place called 1871, which was a big physical space, like a like a kind of the center of the kind of startup activity. They had co-working space, a bunch of VCs had their offices in there, a bunch of corporate sponsorships. Techstars was in there, Impact Engine, a bunch of the accelerators were in there. But I had imposter syndrome like for about a year. I actually didn't think I had that much to contribute, right? I was thinking to myself, like, you know what, like what could people learn from me? I was like, I'm not that special. And But then I decided, you know what, like let's go and do some mentoring. And I think first I did some mentoring at kind of 1871, kind of, they had like these office hours and stuff. And then I got connected to the folks running Techstars here and Impact Engine, which was like an impact related accelerator, and just did a bunch of angel investing as well, both here in the US as well as kind of back home in Finland. Um, and then I kind of realized, okay, actually, it's not just about like giving a check to somebody, right? But the stuff that we learned when we were building Rapid Blue, these are the same things that other companies are struggling with, like the same problems that other startup founders are struggling with, and we went through it. So, you know what? Maybe there is some insight that could be valuable for somebody else. So maybe somebody else is going to have a less painful job their first go around if I can tell them something that helps.
Yeah, that's yeah, helpful. So where did the idea for Reviv come from? Like, what gap did you see in the beauty and retail space?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting story because I was here on Earth now, so I'd moved from Helsinki to Chicago, and my own skin got really bad, and again, my wife was telling me you should go to the dermatologist, get it checked out. But I was like, I'm a guy. Men don't do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm certainly not going to go walk into like a Sephora and Ulta and like talk to one of those consultants because they're just going to sell me stuff I don't need or want So anyway, I kind of suffered through it and 9 months and then I went to the dermatologist. And I had taken pictures on myself in between. So, me being curious, I mean, actually, I just needed to know which product to buy. Like, I didn't even need a prescription. I just literally needed to know which product to buy, which ingredients it should and shouldn't have, and whatever. But I had taken pictures of myself, and I showed those to the dermatologist, just because I was curious. I mean, if I wasn't here, like, what could you tell me about me? And they started explaining all sorts of things. And I was like, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. But I was on an earnout, so I didn't think too much of it. It was just me being curious, like more curious than anything about why is it so difficult? Like, why isn't there just something that tells me which products to buy and I'll be done with it forever? I'll just, that's it. I'm done. I know what to do. So then I started asking around. I said, like, am I just the weirdo here? Like, does anybody else have this problem? And I started asking folks, like, I got weird looks at Starbucks when I started asking people about their skincare routines. I asked Uber drivers and I asked, the doorman in our building in downtown Chicago. And that's where I kind of figured out that, most people actually don't know what to buy. Like that's why they go to the store. They talk to the beauty consultant and the beauty consultant explains things to them and then they end up buying that recommendation. And I'm like, okay, well, what about the digital world? Like, what happens when the beauty consultant isn't there, right? And Rapid Blue was also kind of retail tech business, so I had a bunch of retailer connections. So I called up a bunch of my kind of friends and acquaintances who worked at retailers. How are you guys doing this? And they said, well, we're not really doing e-commerce. We're doing fulfillment. We're just basically consumer knows what they want and they come and they rebuy the same thing online. We're not really doing e-commerce in those categories. And a few of my retailer kind of connections said that, and this was probably like 2015, and I almost got depressed because I was like, guys, you guys have given up on the notion of actually doing business in this channel, which is growing, which is like less than 10% of commerce back then. It's like something's got to give. Like somebody has to fix this. Like there has to be a way for the consumer to figure out what they want and for you to give them an experience that they understand what they want, can discover what they want across digital channels. So that's what really kind of started. It was a kind of personal problem turned into kind of disbelief of what retailers and brands were, how they were kind of behaving at the time. And I was like, okay, like this has got to get fixed. Like somebody's got to do something about this. And, I was coming off an earnout, so, might as well be me.
Beauty is one of the most personal categories in retail. When did you realize that AI could actually solve the personalization problem?
Well, I mean, pretty early on, because again, we were trying to think about, and again, AI was nothing like in 2016 like it is today. Like it was in its infancy, right? So it was infinitely harder to build. But what we realized is, okay, the the reason the beauty business or any personal kind of vertical works in the store is because there's a certain level of trust that you can build between the consumer and the brand, and in store that happens through that in-store beauty consultant. Like they are there to give the customer the experience, to build the trust between the consumer and the brand. And what we started thinking about is how do we replicate that? Like how do we replicate that in the digital world? Like what are the technologies that we need to build or to use in order to actually replicate that same experience that you can get through an in-store beauty consultant, the same feeling for the consumer? How do we do that online? And that's where kind of we started thinking about how do we apply AI to this particular problem, right? And that's where it really started from. So we kind of didn't start from the technology, but really started from what we wanted to achieve, which is how can we replicate that in-store, beautiful experience, that personal experience that you get from a beauty consultant. How do we do that online, or in your brand's mobile app? And that's how we kind of decided on the technology as well.
You kept the same founding team from Rapid Blue. Why was that important, and how did that shared history help?
Well, I think in a number of ways. I mean, right now we've been at this for 10 years, and I think if it was any other founding team, we wouldn't be doing this anymore, right? Like we would just, there would have been a founder breakup by now, because I think one of the things that happens when you have a, group of co-founders is you learn about each other's strengths and weaknesses, and also you kind of become almost like a married couple in a sense, like an old married couple. It's like how the other one thinks, and you also know what they suck at, and everybody sucks at something. Everybody's great at something, and everybody sucks at something, and I think that's really important. And you also once you have kind of history and shared history and kind of, I would say, tough experiences. Like there was a period of time at Rapid Blue where we were almost running out of money. Maybe multiple. There was multiple kind of existential risks, and existential kind of threats, and near-death experiences. And once you kind of go through those, it also, I would say, lowers the kind of barriers in a sense where, like, exactly what you're able to kind of say to the other person. Like you don't have to hold back. Like you don't have to hold your kind of real thoughts back. And okay, like they're more likely gonna accept that, which means, as co-founders, like you can have heated arguments, and it's not gonna break down the company. Like you just fundamentally disagree on something, and that's fine, and you can voice those disagreements. And I think having that type of dynamic and knowing that you're able to have that dynamic kind of going in, like it's hard enough to build a company, right? Like it's hard enough to build a company and find product market fit. Then if you have to figure out at the same time, how do you work with a group of co-founders, and how do they work with you? Like you're just doubling up on hard. So that was, primarily the reason, why we decided to get back together.
You've also talked about your like near-death experiences at both Rapid Blue and Reviv. So can you share one that really tested you?
Well, I think one of them was actually when we were being acquired by Rapid Blue. I remember this. We had an American competitor, and these guys were actually the same team that had built Google Analytics, right? They built a competitor to Rapid Blue in the US. They got like 20 million of funding from like Sequoia and Axel and all sorts of folks. And but this whole privacy thing started to kind of started coming up, and I remember it was Senator Chuck Schumer, who actually he asked this U.S. company, which was called Euclid. He asked them for a response. He actually sent them a letter explaining exactly how their tracking of people is privacy compliant. It was an aggressive letter as well, and he needed like a response in 48 hours. So what SharperTrack did as part of the due diligence of the acquisition is, and this was kind of this became public. Like this was on TechCrunch and all sorts of things, like Schumer is targeting these tech companies and whatever. And they asked us to write a response within 24 hours. They said, give me a response to Schumer's letter in 24 hours. And we were like, holy, whew, okay, heart rate through the roof. Like we gotta get this done. And that was one. The second one was also during due diligence. And this is what I mean. It was probably the most stressful time. I mean, again, it was we basically we were about to close the deal. Like we were about to close the deal, or actually sign. It was not closing, it was signing, and it was 3 days away, right? And everything seemed fine. And then somebody on the acquirer side said, wait a minute, we haven't spoken to any of their customers. We need to speak to at least three of their customers before we sign this. And they said, okay, guys, you've got 48 hours to get us three of your customers on the phone with us, or this thing doesn't happen, or it gets postponed. And if it gets postponed, most likely it doesn't happen. So basically, we have 48 hours to get three of our customers who didn't know anything about the acquisition process, nor could we tell them anything about the acquisition process. We had to develop a story. Why does this third-party company all of a sudden want to talk to them, and get them and times on their calendar within 48 hours? And by the way, we were in Helsinki, Finland, and Shopper Truck was here in Chicago. I got to account for the 8 hour time difference too. So it
Crazy.
was it was just some crazy stuff that ended up happening. So yeah, it's yeah,
You,
fun to
you, you,
remember.
you're a fan of Ben Horowitz and the idea of being both a peacetime and wartime CEO. Which mode are you in right now?
Well, I think right now, if you're a CEO and you're not at wartime, like I think you've lost the plot, because I think you know I honestly think, like, and it has nothing to do with what industry you're in, because if you think about kind of fundamental change that AI is having on the world, and the way products are built, the way companies buy products, the way you sell products, what you build in the first place, everything from like what is possible actually, all the way through to how things get delivered, what are the timelines, what is the speed at which you need to act and react. Like, if you're not at wartime as a CEO, like, I mean, I hope you're very close to selling your company if you're not at wartime, because you're gonna fall behind like so quickly that it's like unbelievable. It's exciting, but like you've got to have your act together.
So COVID forced beauty retail online almost overnight, right? So how did the pandemic change Reviv's trajectory?
Well, I think it massively accelerated us. I mean, to be honest, it massively accelerated us, because I think, again, before COVID, we were really kind of evangelizing. Why should you do this? Hey, you can have the same experience online that you have in store. You can use AI. This is this great thing, great business results, yada yada yada, all these things. But to be fair, a lot of retailers and brands, they treated it as, well, yeah, it sounds interesting, yeah, sure, there's probably something there, but we've got these 17 other things, first on our priority list, so maybe we'll get to it next year. you know um and I think when COVID happened, what people scrambled was, oh my goodness, like, what are we going to do now? How are we going to deliver for the customer? Like, the customer has to go online. How are we going to deliver? I mean, what are we going to do? How are we going to give them experience? Like, if we're just like a listing of products, which every retailer can be, like, how are we going to compete? How are we going to make sure the customer buys from us and not our competition? So I think that sort of forced that sense of urgency, which again ended up massively accelerating our business. But I mean, it wasn't all good though, because I think the other thing that happened when that type of acceleration happens, like, it's good for business, but we also had a lot of young people in the team that kind of grew up professionally kind of during that time. And particularly when you're kind of selling a software as a service product, doesn't matter if it's AI based or not, ours happens to be. um, when you're growing up like professionally in that environment, you kind of get a false sense of, hey, just be around, be present, and people will buy from you, right? Like, you don't need to actually work to earn the trust and business of people, but it's enough, that, hey, you're just there because everybody's buying everything, because everybody has a sense of urgency, like. And I think those are kind of some of the raw learnings that folks got during the time, that kind of business is easy. You're just kind of show up and you have a couple of calls with a customer and they sign a contract and you get a check and great, job done. So it wasn't all good for us either.
So Sampo, for anyone who hasn't tried it, how does Reviv work? Like, walk us through the selfie to recommendation experience.
Yeah, so basically, what we have and what we offer to retailers and brands is actually a full platform of different modules that you can kind of create a customer experience, a personalized customer experience around. It could be around skincare, makeup, hair care, hair color, fragrance, and so forth. In the end of the day, what it is, it's a customer experience that lives on the retailer's or brand's website, or could be in store on a digital screen, which has kind of a flow. So if you think about a skincare, right, a customer experience flow, and this is unique to every brand and every retailer. We've got more than 700 front end features and configurations. But this could be something where first you ask the consumer, hey, what are they looking to solve for? What are their concerns? It could be a chat type interface. It could be more prescriptive with kind of alternatives. The consumer kind of clicks on them. You can have a selfie analysis where we analyze more than 120 different metrics from the skin. We tell the customer, hey, this is what we found. Here's how it's impacting you. Give a bit of educational content, and then tie that into recommending a routine or a set of products from the retailers or brands inventory, right? And that's an example of what an experience could be. But because it's very modular and configurable, it could be anything. Like, you could just have a selfie analysis, so you don't actually ask the consumer anything about their concerns, their preferences, their desires. You just say, hey, snap a selfie, get a bunch of recommendations. It could be that too. Maybe not as compelling as listening to the customer as well. But there's like I said, we have more than 700 kind of features and functionalities that could be configured into an experience. So what the end experiences feel like and look like, they're very different to if you're kind of a mass market retailer versus you're a luxury brand or something in between. But that's the kind of general twist of it.
So you guys now span skincare, makeup, hair care, sun care, nutrition. How do you decide which vertical to enter next?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. I think first and foremost, like, each of these verticals, there's a distinct both consumer problem, but also a problem that brands and retailers are sort of suffering from, right? And that problem could be around discovering the right products. It could be around showcasing my kind of philosophy as a brand so that I stand out amongst my competition to the consumer, and the consumer understands what I'm about as a brand versus what the next guy's about. So first and foremost, we start with that. Like, what is the problem we're trying to solve for this particular vertical, right? And then you look at from our perspective, because we have so many verticals these days, you look at, like, why are we uniquely capable of kind of solving that particular problem? Like, what is it about our platform, our architecture, our kind of competitive advantage that makes us uniquely capable of solving that particular problem? Which means that, if we think about something like apparel, doing a try on for dresses and things like that, it's probably not the first vertical for us. Like, it really isn't, because it's so distant from what we're doing. There's maybe some technology overlap, but there really isn't a customer problem overlap. And there's a bunch of companies that are probably better suited to build solutions for that than we are. So I think that's kind of some of the thought process that we go through when we decide what's the next vertical. And then, of course, again, we're a company of about 50 people, and of course our ability to expand to new verticals and put out new products has been massively helped and increased by AI. But you still have to retain a certain level of focus, and that's why, like, from 2016 when we started all the way to like 2020, we did nothing but skincare. Like, for the first 5 years, it was nothing but skincare, right? I mean, just full focus on skincare, because otherwise, you become a jack of all trades and a master of none, and you're kind of solving the customer problems quite superficially, without focus. And, it's just in the long run, it just doesn't work.
Fascinating. So I guess, Sampo, help me land the plane. Where is beauty tech headed in the next 5 years? And, what does Reviv, or what role does Reviv play in that future?
Yeah, I think I mean, if I think about kind of commerce more broadly, not just beauty, because the way I think about beauty is that it's actually a window to what's happening in the world of commerce and retail in general. It just happens to be at the forefront because the products that consumers are buying are very personal. But the way I would say that you know, there's a massive shift going on in the world of retail, which has actually nothing to do with AI. Um, AI is helping with that or accelerating that shift, but it's a shift that starts with the consumer, because I think the consumer today is kind of so sick and tired of being sold to, and they, quite frankly, they refuse to be sold to, right? Um, but they all need help buying. And I think the big shift that retailers and brands are going to face is everything that they've set up online, in store, their whole infrastructure is predicated, their whole marketing machine is predicated on the fact that we're just going to sell to the consumer, right? When the consumer is trying to click out of our site, we're going to give them a discount. If they don't buy, we're going to, tell them that they've got stuff in the cart and we're going to give them a coupon, right? Everything is about selling to the consumer. And what I think is going to happen in the world of retail is that the brands and retailers that are going to win are the ones that are able to actually shift their mindset that, hey, we're not here to sell to the customer or the consumer, we're here to help the consumer buy. And if we give the customer a feeling, an experience that actually helps them buy, well, surprise, they're going to buy. And they're going to buy from us as opposed to the competition. And I think that is kind of a sort of big fundamental consumer shift that's going on in retail, which is going to impact everything about kind of how retailers and brands organize themselves. How do they do marketing? How do they treat the customer? What is the experience that they give to the customer? And by the way, you're actually seeing this because this is part of the reason why, when there's talk about product discovery moving from the retailers and brands websites and properties to LLMs, ChatGPT, Gemini, and so forth, people are asking Gemini, hey, what's the right product for me? Part of the reason is because they feel like Gemini or ChatGPT is more helpful than going on a retailer's website is. So we're kind of seeing this shift happen sort of firsthand. That's why I said it's sort of accelerated by AI. But I think that's kind of a fundamental shift. And obviously we believe that, we have a very central role to play in effectively helping those retailers and brands shape their thinking and, and transform kind of the experiences that they're offering to their customers away from let's just sell to the consumer to help the customer buy and get experience where the consumer feels like these guys are helpful. They understand me. They're trying to help me. And I'm going to buy from them because they're helping me. I'm not going to buy from them because they're shoving discounts down my throat.
Well said. Okay, Sampo, I'm gonna bring this one to a close, and then but I'd love to have you on as a second time if you're ever up for it. I had a bunch of questions I still had in the queue, but with that said, let's bring this one to an end. I see we got a bunch of people listening to us, so thank you all for joining in. And Sampo, maybe before we let them all go, do you want to just tell them your website and maybe where they can tap into your, I don't know if you blog or if you tweet or something, where do you share most of your insights?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so the company website, reviv.com, so that's REVIEVE.com. And then, of course, myself, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's not too hard because there aren't that many Sampo Parkins on LinkedIn. And that's where I usually do most of my posting and content and so forth. Yeah, those are probably the best places.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much. And with that said, hang out for a minute, Sampo. I'll bring this live stream to an end. And thank you all for tuning in. Take care.